And it is the top of the hour, so we are going to get started. We don't need to introduce a guest speaker, but I must say we both work for the Waters, and I am very, very excited for this open studio. One, because the habits is what makes the Waters Center unique, but also because Sheri is my former AFC coach and now my colleague, and also came up with one of the habits cards we're going to be sharing today. So I am also excited to watch her present part of this. I'm excited for all of us to walk away today with some more understanding of how to use the habits to improve our systems thinking in daily life. So, Sheri, would you like to share the slides or would you want me to?
Oh, sorry, I will do that. I thought we were, and then I stopped. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. So, today we are talking about systems thinking in daily life. And to get us started and warmed up a little bit, we are going to start with a question to you all. And that is, if my slides would advance. Sheri, can you advance this one?
Sure.
So in the chat, I want you to share just one habit you use in your thinking, your systems thinking practice. This doesn't have to be one of the water centers ones. We really want you to think about your practice and experience. So what is one habit you use to practice systems thinking? See, zooming out to look at the big picture. What's the system? It's a great one, Richard. Recognizing behavior. Structure generates behavior, varied perspectives, listening, looking at problems from a different perspective, big picture and devil's advocate, defining the system, paying attention to delays, relationships and structures. Just noticing the systems. I think that's a good point. Just recognizing that we are in a system, money systems that are interconnected, mental models. Upriver, I love the upstream, downstream reference. So not surprised with this group, but it does seem like many of us are already practicing habits. And I already see the connections between the water center habits, but how you've made them your own already in your daily life. So today, our intention together is to build on the wisdom that's in the room and explore the habits of a systems thinker as everyday's practice. So adding some more things to your toolkit, some simple activities you can apply to your work and life. We want you to reflect together and individually. And we hope that you leave curious and you have some more questions. You're able to share perspectives with one another. And as promised in our description, there will be practical next steps for you to continue your systems thinking journey. And now, talking a little bit about habits and also how they might relate to goals.
All right. I am getting a bit of a delay. So, Drea, if I sound, I'm going to count on you to tell me if I sound funny. And I can't change that. There we go. Sorry about that. Whoops, too fast. So we're gonna, as I look out in this group, again, I'll just reiterate the good morning. I'm super excited to be here and sharing with Drea a little bit about the habits. It certainly is a big part of our work every single day. And we want to make sure that we are really intentional about helping others make it part of their daily practice. So Octavia Butler says, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you whether you're inspired or not. It will help you finish and polish your stories. Inspiration won't. And we do want to be a bit inspirational today. That's only fair, but really to talk about habits specifically. So, in that piece and in some of the work, and again, this is when I look at the audience, I feel like many of you could teach this part about habits and making things conscious even better than I. But there is kind of a difference between goals and habits. And we talk about goal setting and we set goals, and there's certainly some reason to do that. So I had a goal of several years ago for a number of years that I wanted to run a half marathon. And I jokingly said, and I wanted to finish before the street sweeper came. And so that was a goal. I did accomplish that. I did it in December of 19, I believe, finished that, but that was an endpoint. And so that was crossed off the list. And I can honestly say, and again, looking at the athletes on the screen, haven't run again since, nor do I ever want to. As composed to if I had made a habit, if that training hadn't been all about being rigorous and getting ready and getting everything tuned up to do that half marathon on that specific day, and I'd cultivated a habit of walking, that might have been for life. Now I still do it occasionally, but I'm not one of these people that say, I walk 20 minutes every day, rain or shine. No, and it's 110. It's really hard to walk even inside to a tape or to a treadmill. And so habits are for life and habits can be overshot. I met the goal. I finished before the street sweepers, but we really want to now think about what are those things we can do that make them long. Goals require that consistent willpower and self-discipline. If you're measuring something against a scale and it's not moving, then it's more discipline, more rigor, keeping it tighter. Habits can be really tiny. So they can be small steps over which we can have some control. So the amount of water that we drink or the number of steps that we take. Goals are static. Like I've set the goal, I achieve it. Now I can set more, I can do double, but they tend to, habits can compound. So maybe I start the 15 minutes of walking and that turns into 20, which turns into 30, which turns into, I make sure over a week I do 5 or 6 hours of walking. So goals can be overshot. Couple more examples. So let's say that I have a goal to become more well-read, and that's a lofty and good goal, would help a lot of people in a lot of situations. But a habit would be that I download something on my phone, which I can guarantee almost all of you always have with you. And so when I get those unexpected delays, not necessarily traffic jams, but waits at the medical office or at the bank, I could read a little bit. And so you'd be amazed at how much content I might be able to add to my repertoire. Or maybe I just want better dental hygiene because that relates to physical health. Again, lofty goal, but I did read that like you could have a habit that you just floss one tooth. And when one tooth or 1 minute isn't so bad, you might end up flossing two. So that idea that they can be overshot, they can compound, and they can grow. So just thinking a little bit about habits versus goal, is that GIF in the top, that habits is persistence and practice. So again, rather being this willpower and force, habit just becomes persistence and helps us move. So that background is really a big reason that the habits of a systems thinker were actually developed. I'm going to take you on a brief history through the habits. Some of you, particularly those of you from our advanced facilitator credential, have seen this. So the Water Center really began as a systems thinking in schools project in a particular school district here in Tucson in the 90s. And so there had been a lot of research and development. There had been a lot of thinking about what do we need to really make these concepts accessible to children and to adults, to students and to teachers. So from 90, we were about 15 years in before the first version of the habits came to be. And so you see those on the screen. They were what was termed in the tech world back then it's green bean people. And so, but they had some illustration, a little bit of story, something to help people begin to see what is it that we want in a habit. So in 2006, they took under a pretty good revision. They got some color. Those stories in those illustrations became a little bit more clear. We added the 13th habit, which I looked this up yesterday. Delays. Time delays was the new one that was added from 2006 to 2007. And we added the questions. So they went from just a sheet of paper to the cards. And those of you that have cards know that. And we probably Drea, would you be so kind as to drop just the cards in the chat? If you don't have them in front of you and want to have them, that would be great. So then 2010, and my colleague, our former CEO, was teaching a workshop, and somebody said, there are no girls in those, even though we had color. Like, are only males systems thinkers? And we're like, no, it really wasn't intentional. It was really about ease of illustration and the capacity we had at the time. But we added females, and we added females intentionally, like, working on the car in some of the roles that they weren't thought about. So new art continued to refine the language. This was about the era, and again, some of you have heard me tell this piece of the story. This was about the era when the Water Center and I was working in a school at that time, and in a primary magnet school, actually, and they developed some language that they thought would be really good for younger children. And so Tracy, again, my colleague, brought those to me, said, try them out with the kids for about a month, 6 weeks. She came back and said, "What did you think?" And I honestly said, this was probably my most direct, honest piece of feedback in my life. I said, "I really think you should burn them, hide them, wrap them up in brown paper and never let people see them." Because when they simplified them or made them more kid-friendly, it took away the meat. I mean, leverage is a concept that, when scaffolded and supported with teachers who understand children and developmentally appropriate practice, can help children make great meaning of the word leverage or perspective or mental model. But when you take those words out, there's not the meat. So the language development was really important. This was also then about the time that we began adding that 2010, 2011, we added Spanish. We had them translated, vetted, and really birthed a translation process that is used today. We're at 11 right now, be 13 by the end of the year, hopefully the end of the year, with the addition of Thai and Hindi. And then in 2014, 2015 was the most significant content revision. And this was when we combined the consequences habit, so we didn't go to 15, and we added meaningful connections and accumulations. Accumulations had been more central if you were really following those in some of the early language with the patterns and trends, but because the stock flow map is such a central piece of system dynamics in the work, we wanted to make sure that was included in the habit. And then Drea gives me too much credit. I did not create makes meaningful connections within and between systems, but it was on the drawing board, and people were like, "Oh, we don't need that habit. People just do that." And I was a very vocal advocate that no, we don't just do it. Some people do. I mean, there are many, many, and we always want people to know that we all do pieces of these things all the time. But it's about building intentional practice and that ability to see novel connections and connections in different ways is a really important part. So we added that one. And then April 1st, and that was literally the date of 2020. There's something really significant about April Fool's Day in the year 2020 that makes it very easy for me to remember. We got the version that we have now, which has illustrations that are very intentionally designed. So everyone, you see a lot more of diversity and character. And I've shared this story multiple times too. So Matt Holbein, who's our director of creative technology, took a position with us around the beginning of 19, and he said, "I'm taking this job because, I want the job, but I want to redesign the artwork on the habits." And he gently and persistently reminded us as we gave him other projects and developed the website that I really want to redo the habits. And so when we said go ahead, like the work that he created, it has been just an amazing transition. The content is basically the same. We've changed some of the stories. I think some of the stories, um, I love changes perspectives to changes perspectives to increase understanding, where that adult physically moves, like that action that's implied that it takes to really understand and to change perspectives. Now that used to be a funky thing that looked like a tree on one side of a fence and a bird on the other. That was probably more fun for the younger kids. So there are a couple, and I think surface and test assumptions used to be about, is this cereal healthy or tasty? And do I want healthy or tasty cereal? Which again, also probably connected with children a little better than the surface and tests over graphs, but certainly both serve their purpose, and this has been a really powerful way to grow and to reach 10% and to help everybody bring systems thinking into their daily life, which is where we want to go next. There is a book called The Habit Forming Guide to Becoming a Systems Thinker. Basically, it is also the each module of TTS. If you take the habits courses on our Thinking Tool Studio, you will get all of this same content. But one of the ways that we designed that book was to look at 5 systems that are part of our everyday life: our workplace, our school, our well-being, our family, and our community, because systems and the habits can be practiced in all those areas. And again, thinking as an educator, that's what made this such a unique pedagogy is, there's some great math programs, there's some great reading programs that kids use in math or in reading, or even the National Geographic work in social studies. But when we use systems thinking as a discipline, as a practice for any age, birth to 1012, when we use systems thinking as a practice, it permeates all of these areas, and it's something that we can use all across our life. So let's take an example. We're going to go to the well-being system for just a few minutes, and we're going to talk about this was some happiness study work that was done by, it's a PBS series from way back in 2010, but it still seems pretty relevant. And again, my diehard introverts may disagree with this story, but the story says that the more time we spend connecting, meaningful connections, snuck that one in, with other people, the happier we are. The happier we are, the higher our quality of relationships, the better our quality of relationships, the more time that we spend connecting with people. And so for those of you that have some background in the tools, that is a nice reinforcing loop. Here's that story kind of spelled out in terms of the research, and I'll let you read it without me palavering here for a minute. So I think one of the ways, and I'm going to sneak this in a little early, but one of the ways that we can practice these habits is to look for this kind of language. This is clearly a reinforcing story right out of a research report. So we can look for that language when we're reading, when we're listening to something on the news. Now, this one is quite positive and productive, but I'm sometimes when I hear something on the news, there's definitely reinforcing feedback, escalating feedback, things that are where you can say, wow, that's really throwing gasoline on the fire, to use a euphemism, but that clues you that that's reinforcing. So then, as a systems thinker, making this part of your practice, can you say, is that something we want to fuel? Or is that something we want to slow? Do we want to look for something that's going to limit that rapid acceleration that we see? And how can we get that positive boost that comes from connecting? And yes, I saw that typo. I'll fix that just momentarily. So that's our idea here. Dria's going to do an example. We're going to do a couple more habits specifically. But when you think about the 14 habits, thinking about your well-being, we're going to kind of dwell on this happiness. And maybe you're like, yeah, I spend plenty of time connecting with people. My happiness, my really charge comes from reading a good book, having some time to decompress. So it might be time to decompress leads to more happiness, satisfaction, use the word of your choice, joy. The more joy I have, the more refilled I am to be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish so I can find that time. But just thinking of things that fuel your happiness in terms of reinforcing feedback. Drea, take it away.
Yes, and speaking of drawing things out and thinking of loops, another thing we want to think about is how do we track change over time? And one of the fundamental rules in systems thinking, or I'm hesitant to say rules, just nature of systems, is that they are constantly changing or they're dynamic. And we see that with systems like weather, the seasons, the world around us is constantly changing. We may see that with different trends. So if you're working in a place where there are graphs, or even just ourselves. Like we're constantly changing our moods, our energy level, how tired we are, how fatigued we are. So systems are changing, the internal system of ourselves and the systems around us, and noticing these changes can really help you understand your thinking around why this change may be occurring, but also share that thinking with someone else. And so you might notice a graphic on this card about how elements change over time, and that is a behavior over time graph. And we're going to take a little bit of time, no pressure. This is just for your own practice, doing this together. So, and please apologize for my slides. My internet is a little wonky, so I'm trying to get back. But what you can do with a piece of paper is draw a Y and X axis.
I'm not doing that, am I, Drea?
No, it's me trying to
Okay,
get internet.
okay.
So like this. Thank you so much for your patience. Even us professional facilitators have some tech issues here and there. So we want you to draw one of these. It can be digitally or on a piece of paper. And you want the x-axis to be time and the y-axis to be personal happiness. And this is going to be about a 2-day spread. So the last 48-ish hours. And you're going to graph this trend line. So this is one that I created over my 48 hours. So you can see that I'm sleeping. I don't really know what my happiness is. I'm going to make a guess that it's somewhere in the middle. And then I wake up, it slowly gets better. This little perk right here is about lunchtime. I'm happy. I've probably interacted with a bunch of people. I love connecting and talking. I'll get a little slump because I'm kind of hungry, I'm tired, but then I have a slight dip because I love cooking and I get to make dinner. Um,
Mhm.
and then I get to go to bed and it continues. And I just slowly get happier. I think in general, I'm a pretty happy person. So we want you to do the same thing. Give you a couple minutes, draw your trend line over the last 48 hours. So what does this graph look like for you, for your personal happiness over the last 2 days? And when you've got something, you can give me a thumbs up physically. You can use one of the reactions in Zoom. You can put it in the chat. Just let me know where you're at with your behavior over time graph. What are the changes over time with your personal happiness? You've got one, Tori, Richard, Rowena, Ashley, Megan. All right, so I'm seeing some. You can continue drawing. So then what I want you to do in chat or unmute, just share a couple things that led to your trend. So here's an example I like to use in trainings. This is another way to use a behavior over time graph. It's energy level. But what I like about this example is how they label it. So you can do these with, quantitative data and have numbers or very specific events, but I kind of like how this is just personal. They're saying they don't like when their alarm goes off. They're really low energy. Then they get a coffee boost. This is where their energy is happening. The big lunch, I can totally relate. But so what are some of your points on your trend for your happiness? If you had to label your trend, what would be some of the things on there? Well, Brianne, a behavior over time graph can help increase that self-awareness. A high point is getting home from work to see family, and low points, and oh, I'm sorry, I hope you feel better, feeling sick. That would definitely change the behavior over time graph for sure. Oh, playing sports in the social time, getting to hang out with other moms, picking your kids up from school. Again, connection. See, the habits are so hard to focus on one because they're so interconnected to one another. So I'm seeing a lot of connections. Ooh, that time for reflection in the nature preserve, the conversations you have, ability to relax, mornings.
Hmm.
Ah, so that is a wonderful friend to give you some homemade food. Oh, and the weather, right? So the connections between systems, how other systems will affect our internal system of happiness. I see a lot of high points too, again, with energetic conversations, going to games, choir. Yes, keep them coming. So again, in just a couple minutes, you've already gotten experience using this tool to deeper your understanding of yourself as a system. So that's one practical way that you can integrate the habits. But this is also fun to do in community and in connection. So we've seen teams do this at work, asking about when are you hitting your high point when we're thinking about scheduling meetings. I remember one client said, people just really don't like to participate. The energy's low. And after a behavior over time graph, they found it's like, oh, we're placing these meetings when most people are feeling kind of tired. Maybe we can reorient it. So again, there's so many different ways we can use this. And this is just one for the internal system. But again, these can be used for our larger systems as well. You can look at an organization, a county, a state, a country, anything that you want to measure over time to see those changes. And we've been teasing it this whole time. But next up, we have the meaningful
Yes.
connection between systems.
So I'm just going to ask you to think based on the little bit we've talked about, the happiness research, things you know about what brings you happiness or joy, the things that you drew, what connections, and ask you to put these in chat too quickly. Like, what are some connections you've already made? I had someone in a training once, because again, if you've done this with us, you oftentimes, when people are brand new to the habits, will say, find one that speaks to you. Find one that you can just look at the picture. You've not seen them before, but you look at the picture, you get the message, and you can make a connection to your life. And someone actually said from the cover of this habit quite recently, just thinking about how I work in all those systems and when I'm aligned and integrated to my values, like making those connections is a key to my happiness. We weren't talking about happiness. The question was just, how do these habits connect to you? And she looked at this illustration and that was her. She said, this is what makes me happy. My family, my faith, the kids' school, much like what we heard in the chat as you were drawing your graphs. Like it was those connections to some of these things. And like Drea said, it's incredibly difficult. If you've seen the book or looked at the habits courses, you know when that was designed, like writing about one habit at a time, we just couldn't do it. So there are little sections that say, or you might make connections. So all of them have connections to multiple habits. But thinking about what's again, how does the connection, how do these interrelationships affect your happiness?
Mm.
As much as the fan. So there's the one that's strong. So, and to connect connections to feedback, we talked about that reinforcing cycle of happiness. But you also might think about what are the balances. My husband worked with a gentleman who said, when your work life is really busy, make sure that your home and your family life is really calm. Like now, he was the boss, making sure that his work life was really crazy, but his answer was not limit the work craziness. His answer was just get your house in order and you'll be fine because you'll be able to manage that stress. That was the best advice ever, but it could come from that idea of a habit. Like when something is really, really stressful, how can you make it work in a different way? Any other connections that you can make?
Richard, I love what you said about it's no one system, but the interactions between them. Seems like a lot of people like that one too.
That's a reaction.
Happiness in nature.
So Liz and Molly give us lots of good graphs and illustrations, and this is one of ours too, is that meaningful connections between the habits, this image, and your happiness. It certainly connects to what Drea said because it is a graph. And so if I'm kind of graphing and Drea gave you a 48-hour window, what would your happiness graph look like over the last year? Sometimes we do assess people's stress based on a stress scale and accumulation. And so there may have been some really big dips over time, like this line on the left. But if that has come after a pretty solid year, a year of jubilee, a year of rejuvenation, that big dip, you may have been well equipped to deal with some of that stress that you're experiencing. So making meaningful connections in terms of, and there was a comment in the chat about being self-aware, and Andrea's response that, the tools do. We say that the habits are good for developing common language. They give us a way to talk about some of these deeper concepts. They're good because they identify some of the systems thinking tools that we can use to think more deeply, to solve problems differently. And then that third piece is really what we're talking about today. A big purpose of the habits is to help us reflect. And again, I was an advocate for this particular habit about connections because it kind of brings us to that place of, and again, you're saying it so well in chat, connection with happiness and time spent with family, time spent in nature, seeing the interrelationships with the systems. They give us that opportunity to just to step back and to think and to reflect and to find our own meaning and satisfaction. So, we are going I'm going to turn it over to Drea for some more directions, but I'll just say in transition, like now we really want you to practice this and we want you to take the idea of building a habit, but thinking about happiness. I'll launch the poll. Andrea, you can give directions.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a poll coming up with our water center habits of a systems thinker. Again, if you're new to you, what Sheri said earlier, whatever ones you're drawn to or resonates the most, but we want you to pick one of the habits that contribute to your accumulation of happiness. So what systems thinking habit, if it became part of your daily life, would help grow your accumulation of happiness? And if you're not seeing the poll, please let us know in chat so we can try and fix that for you.
And there are two questions, just answer one because we will relaunch a separate poll for our next one. So just launch it on the first one, if you will. We have a big picture, got patterns and trends. All right, there you go. People are responding. Beautiful. There's just about a half. Can we give them another 10 seconds, Drea?
Oh, absolutely. Number 30.
Okay, I'll end and share results. So,
Looks like a tie
so
between.
yeah, mental models and meaningful connections are tied for first. I think that's incredibly fascinating, but it's not my commentary than that.
So
Can we ask how would you, how do those habits of those two in particular, or well, anybody can unmute and respond to why they chose theirs, but I'd love to hear like, I mean, total agreement, but how do mental models affect your happiness? I think that's a great thing to articulate.
Richard, take it
Richard.
away.
Yeah, so I was really struggling with which to choose, but I decided to go with circular cause and effect, I think, just because sometimes I catch myself in places of not happiness. Um, and if I can trace back what got me there, I can undo it next time, right? And so earlier I was thinking, what if I went back and actually looked at my habits relative to my life purpose and my purpose at work and my purpose at home, and which habits lead me towards and away from? And that feels very much like a circular cause and effect kind of a thing. So just spending that time in that kind of reflection is something I'll be doing a little bit more of.
Done. Breaking the doom loop. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a great point, because again, we gave an example of a very positively reinforcing loop at the beginning, but they can absolutely go in an opposite direction. Again, I have a total agreement and a total mental model of why someone would have chosen mental models, but I'd love to hear from a couple of you that chose that one.
Yeah, Megan, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, mental models are something that have benefited me a lot in life, and being able to see a broader perspective as well. I guess that's related to one of the others, but also how I interpret an event, um, or even my experience of when challenging things have happened, and in the future I see how I benefited from that challenge. Now my perspective is such that when a challenge comes up, I think that, this may be hard now, but I may have some benefits out of it as well. And it has shifted how I see so many things in my life.
Beautifully said, Megan. Thank you for that. Kelly, I see you in the chat. Would you like to unmute and share?
I can. I didn't pick either of those. I picked resist the urge to come to a quick conclusion, because I feel like so quickly people hear a piece of information and then jump to a quick conclusion that starts this doom spiral. Um, and it's like, let's stop, step back. It's a mixture of a whole lot of things. Part of it is the mental models that you've come to the news with. But I think not giving in to that really quick, everything is so fast paced, really helps with happiness production. And part of that is just how we engage with the news and such in general. But it's the slowing down that I'm really interested in, and the resisting the urge to come to a quick conclusion.
I think that is really important wisdom for this time in general, especially the power of pause. You talk about that when it comes to, interpersonal conflict or even just in general, because we don't always have all of the perspectives or a full view of the system. So I think that's a really great point to elevate. As is this one about mental model being a lens, the way we see the world, and how they might differ depending on what you're looking at. One person may see something as wonderful, or one person might see it as crushing. So those mental models can differ. Yes, Megan, so many of them do work together. As you all were talking, I could see 4 or 5 cards, but it is sometimes nice to focus in on one. Oh, Ashley, the big picture. I love that. And it very much relates to that graph that Sheri showed when you zoom out and see the big picture over time.
Definitely.
Would anyone else like to share? Again, it's not just for us, but also everyone here. We can learn from each other and how the habits can help with happiness. All right. So then I'm going to try and move the slides. Everybody cross your fingers for me, because that has been going so well today. All righty. So we talked about the habits themselves, but also there are some science-backed ways that we can practice the habits. We gave some activities, but these are kind of more zoomed out suggestions. If you're like, I want to do more systems thinking day to day, how can I do the habits? So there are some things like starting small. Sheri had mentioned it earlier. Whatever feels most natural or you're drawn to, start there. It helps build confidence. It can help you stay motivated. We have all of these tips cited in our blog that we will put in the chat, but you can also scan the QR code here. And then there's something called habit stacking. Has anyone heard of this before? Concept of habit stacking. I'm seeing some heads nod. If you're already doing something, you can add a habit to it. So for example, I'm going to call out Kim Bowling. We've talked about this before as avid journalers when we were trying to increase our systems thinking practice. You can just add the habits to that practice that already exists as a way to bring that systems thinking lens. Yes, Atomic Habits, that is a great resource. And then create visual reminders and cues. So one of the ones that we love at the Water Center is the Slinky. It's a way to think about structure generating behavior. So if that's something that you need to think about more often in your work or you want to draw attention to, maybe put one of those at your desk. Or if there's another creative way that you can think about different habits you want to practice, that kind of primes the pump a little bit. And then Kelly had kind of foreshadowed, but that time for pause. So where can you create space in your life for reflection and intentionality? One of my favorite professors said, we don't learn from doing, we learn from reflecting on doing. So how can we create that space to think about our systems thinking practice and the systems that we're a part of? But then also practicing in community. So we're more likely to stay motivated and learn from one another if we have people to share things with. So find your people, do your habits together, or have that reflection time. Maybe it's a coffee walk, but find people to share these experiences with. And very tangibly, oh, we're just trying our best here. We have the Thinking Tool Studio. We have the Habit Forming Guide to Becoming a Systems Thinker. We have a blog on this very topic. And we are launching, and you are the first to know, a 30-day habit challenge. So we will put the link in chat right now, but we also have a QR code here that you can scan. And this is really a way to kind of incorporate all of the different things we talked about today, but in community and with the support of the Water Center. So what we're going to do is first, you'll fill out the form. And on that form, we're going to ask, you choose one habit of a systems thinker, the action you will take to practice over 30 days. You share the change that you hope to see, and then how you'll track your progress. And this is really more for you than for us, but there is something about writing it down and setting the intention. And then to sweeten the pot, not that you need to, I know you're all really excited and going to jump and do this immediately, but if you share your journey with us, we are actually offering a giveaway. So if you take a picture or make a post, share with other people how you're doing the habit challenge, you will be entered for every tag we receive to get a free habit forming guide to becoming a systems thinker, a set of our big cards with the pictures, and also a set of our pocket deck. So these don't have the pictures, but they do have a really cool case and they have all the questions and the key points. So join that link, tag us on LinkedIn, and be entered to win this prize. So now we'll stop sharing for a moment because we have a couple minutes here together. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. What are some things that are coming up for you as you're thinking about your systems thinking practice in your daily life? Thank you, Megan. I'd love to pick your brain, no pun intended, more about how we can make those connections. What other questions or thoughts do we have?
Mhm.
Or what ideas do you have for applying systems thinking to your daily life?
I'm just thinking about the shift from, gosh, I'm going to bring systems thinking to this problem on the one hand versus I'm going to become a systems thinker on the other hand, right? I'm just going to start thinking and seeing and imagining and living in a systems perspective, and just how things shift when all of a sudden I don't have to go to a deck of cards to remember, oh my gosh, what is the connection between these things? Or wait, what's the mental model that's at play here? Because it just becomes part of my way of thinking. And what, like something like this 30-day challenge just kind of just nudges us towards fluency, I guess, in understanding and living systems thinking habits and tools versus just trying them on when we need them. A little bit like the practice of mindfulness or any other kind of practice that can make a difference. That's what I'm noodling on.
Mm. I love that too, that almost where it can, with practice, become more of a second nature, where you don't necessarily need the cards right away. It just becomes part of how you do things. Thank you for that, Richard. What are some other reflections or ways that you see this? Megan, please share.
You've mentioned it already, but I'm really struck by how pretty much all of them require us to slow down and reflect, which it's just necessary, but that's where the movement can happen. Yeah, I'm just struck by that.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much. I see 2 questions too. So Joe would like to know how long the 30-day challenge is open to share with colleagues. Thank you for sharing. I feel the form we can keep open till end of October.
Mhm. Sure.
The giveaway stops October 1st though.
And at least it has a hand raised.
Lisa.
Hi, good morning. My current challenge is working within systems that clearly can demonstrate how they use some of, like, see the big picture relationships, changing, like the close approximations changing if you're getting new information. But how do we use those habits within the system to get people participating in the system to use lesser used ones, or ones that are, so ones that we're struggling with in some of the systems or that I work within are the recognizing the impact of time delays, surfacing and testing assumptions, and considering, this is a big one, short-term, long-term, and unintended consequences. This is the one that really sort of burns us, and in lots of different ways. And it's like we can manage, we're good, and I say we collectively, and it's obviously it's not unanimous, but for the general part, we can do those pieces and look at those, but how can we use those habits to help us do those other ones better? It's kind of where I get stuck, and I'm really trying to figure out how to move and ask questions and participate to move people into developing those skills a little bit, those habits a little bit better.
So the ones in general, I guess it's for me, what comes to mind too is people's entry point into systems thinking and the habits, and finding the best way to meet them where they're at. And the more it can become a language that everybody uses together, I think instead of drawing someone to particularly one habit, I find just creating this general kind of culture of using and sharing that language is what's really helpful. I know that's probably not the most concrete, but that is what we found has become the most effective. Sheri, do you have insights on that?
Yeah, I would just, yes, I agree. And it's a process. Like, again, it's that practice, it's persistence in practice. So if I haven't been one who thinks about consequences a lot, Like it's going to perhaps take me more practice than someone who does that naturally. I think there is this like intrinsic piece, and then how do we promote from there? So, and I was struck by it was Brianna, the comment about like their group is doing them one habit at a time. And this is just, again, it's a journey. You learn things. And we have found over time that actually is kind of a cool way for a team to address those habits, is to sort of have a focus. And I've had schools that have done them like the habit of the month, and they put it in the newsletter and the kids talk about it. And to underscore what Drea said, it's not that you're only talking about consequences, because the other habits can help you be better at seeing the consequences. If you're paying attention to patterns and trends, that's going to help you see long-term consequences. If you're being mindful of what you want to accumulate, that helps you think more long-term instead of just short-term. So they're very connected. And it can be perfectly reasonable to say, what's everything we can gather about this particular habit? Now, if you're, and you're not, but if you're in a company that has more of a physical space, like we've had people put break rooms up and call it like a habits wall, and just, or in a lounge somewhere that there's a common space, and they put all the habits cards up. And every time people see an example, they go write it. It might be from a song, it might be from a movie, it might be from a meeting that you had in that company, just to kind of immerse people in the habits. And that can be done like one at a time. So you could put a big bulletin board or maybe a virtual bulletin board about consequences, and or you could just have all of them. So like you're having people, because something that connects a story and illustration, yanking a cartoon, printing out a meme, putting it up there, that can really build deep understanding of the habits too. That was kind of a long answer. So do we want to launch the poll? So if you decided which habit you might focus on, you don't have to focus on just one for your 30-day challenge, we'd love to know. Just kind of give us a foretaste, and we're going to leave this open 1 minute. So hop in there and do that poll quickly. Which habit are you choosing? Got a structure, big picture. I can see them as they come. More big picture, more structure, changing perspectives, short and long-term consequences. 30 seconds. Which one habit do you want to choose? Please answer in the first box if you can. Mental models, circular cause and effect. 15 seconds. Structure generates behavior is really a popular one, which we could have talked about that one for a long time too. That is a great one to put into daily practice. 2, 1, ending poll, sharing results. So big picture, system structure. I mean, we're surfacing testing assumptions right now. Like, which habit are you going to choose? Which habit's going to be impactful? Letting people see those results can all be a part. I'm going to shut that and pull up some slides for us too. Are you ready for the end ones, Drea?
So in addition to our 30-day challenge, if you are very systems thinking curious and you want to learn even more, we have a couple options. We have the Foundations of Systems Thinking workshop. So this is going to be an 8-hour virtual course. We have 2 different options in terms of format. So you can just do it one full day. You can break it up into 2 sessions, and we have 3 different time slots and offering. Our early bird is about to end this week. So if you are thinking about it, you are curious, or if you want to bring your team, this is the time for that discount. But this is going to be a great primer if you're kind of like, oh, I like systems thinking, but I really want to understand more of these tools and habits. This is for you. And if you are on your journey and you're like, I want to take a deep dive, we have multiple advanced facilitators on this call right now. Sheri and I are both coaches. I am an alum of cohort 1, and we have the last cohort of this year beginning October 6th. We won't be having another one till later in 2026. So if you're thinking about it, I would sign up here. This is great for teams to do as well, but this is really not only just a way to dive deeper into systems thinking tools and how to actually facilitate them, but one of the greatest assets I think of joining this program is the community of practice. So not even just the people that you're in it with for 1 year, but the people that you connect to across cohorts. Again, here I think we have 4 or 5 featured, but it is really a lovely place to kind of build that community of people who are talking about systems thinking, who are talking about habits, but also applying it to their work. So we highly recommend this program. It comes with coaching, it comes with sessions, and it comes with a lifelong membership of community of practice and relationship with your coach. We're still friends and talk to everyone that we've worked with right here. And thank you, Richard, for sharing your AFC experience in the chat. And then we have another open studio. We do these every month. This one is going to be later in observation of Yom Kippur. We did not want to have it on a holiday. So this will be later in the month of October, but Bani Bazada is going to be speaking about creating the conditions for prosperity. Sheri, this is a dear friend of Sheri's, but also she has a lot of experience applying systems thinking to different social challenges and making a more prosperous community where you are. So this will be a wonderful open studio, a nice way to start off fall. And we look forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you guys. Thanks for your time. And we will we'll also announce some winners in that open studio, but we'll on October 1st, we'll let people know. So please do that challenge. Watch for it on social media. We'll be watching for you.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
guys.